Attention aspiring hip-hop artists. You have the right to rap your heart out, but anything you say or write can be used against you in a court of law. The hip-hop industry is big business. It generates over $10 billion a year and has long since entered mainstream American pop culture. We regard most every creative art form as just that, creative fiction escape. Yet criminal defendants who have dabbled in writing rap lyrics have been convicted after their violent scribblings have been submitted to juries as evidence of their wrongdoing. And with the New Jersey Supreme Court now reviewing one such conviction, it's worth discussing what exactly is going on here. And let's talk about the New Jersey Supreme Court case that you read about in the New York Times, that is part of your study that you're publishing as well in a journal. What happened here? Why were the lyrics used in evidence? What's the case that's being pressed against the defendant here?
In 2005, there was a shooting, and Vontae Skinner, who is the defendant in this case, was charged with attempted murder. Ultimately, the prosecutor brought in about 13 pages of his violent gangsta rap lyrics, read them aloud to the jury, even though the lyrics were written anywhere from months to years before the actual crime, didn't mention the victim, and didn't mention any details of the case. The way that prosecutors bring in these lyrics, I think sometimes we need to make a distinction between the justifications they use and the real reason they're doing it. So this prosecutor brought them in to show, I think, motive and intent. But I think in many of a prosecutor can't say, Your Honor, I'd like to bring these lyrics in to show that this guy is a thug. So you have to use a legal justification to do it, but prosecutors, I think in many cases, really are hoping for a prejudicial effect on the jury, and that's certainly what happens when these lyrics come in front of them.
Yeah, Paul, in these cases then, from the perspective of a former prosecutor and a law professor, do you think that such introduction of such evidence is a violation of due process or the state or federal rules of evidence?
Well, it almost certainly violates the rules of evidence of most states, because under those rules, you're not allowed to say because someone has done something bad, it's called prior bad acts, in the past, that means that they did it in this trial. And courts have ruled that even though it's art, it can be considered prior bad acts because it makes the defendant look like some kind of violent thug. And I think it's right that that's the subtext that prosecutors want to convey to the jury. So they're really kind of sneaking it in, but it's prejudicial. And there's another really important evidence rule that says even if something is relevant in some way, if it's too prejudicial, then it doesn't come in. And the courts that have done the right thing in these cases have looked at this evidence and said, if a jury sees these lyrics, they're not going to understand that we're talking about art. They're going to think, this is this guy's autobiography. It's real life. And so those courts that have, again, done the right thing have excluded the evidence.
This is a complicated thing from a cultural perspective, right? Because the music itself is by design supposed to be about authenticity, especially when you're talking about like more hardcore or more violent rap or more hypermasculine rap. It's about, authentic narratives about oneself. But you have to understand from an artistic perspective, they're taking license all day, every day. This is why it's not reliable as evidence. Listen, social scientists and literary scholars and psychologists can't use gangster rap as evidence. Certainly a court of law cannot use gangster rap as evidence. Just because there are going to be some exceptions where some nitwit who actually committed a crime wants to rap about it, does not therefore give the justice system license to, in a sense, not just prejudice these juries based upon the narratives that they submit as evidence, but you got to remember the jurors are putting that into a context of what they see from hip hop culture and Black youth culture in film, in the music, on TV, right? And so there's a broader cultural context that informs some of these things. And really, I think when you get down to brass tacks, this is not good for the justice system. We probably need to leave gangster rap lyrics out of evidence in the prosecution at the federal and state levels.